If you clicked on this video, I'm going to assume you already know what it is going to be about, therefore I do not need to re-explain the basics of it. What I will be doing in this video, however, is explaining my side of the story that hasn't been fully understood or even given the benefit of the doubt. I have been asked, why couldn't I have shown images of the book a month ago, as if that is the only way to resolve this situation. From the perspective of me and everyone involved, you would understand that is not the case. Proving the book exists is one thing, but I would like to fully emphasize that this situation is a lot more complex than it is thought out to be, in which there is a lot of unspoken history leading up to the eventual leak of this document. The other reason of the development of this video taking a while is that I initially did not handle this well. It was sudden and was out of impulse. Given my outbreaks in mental health, I could not have handled it worse. I am not fully innocent in the regards of the situation, as I did lie and dance around the fact that there was a cover-up. And for that, I apologize for keeping this from the community in a very immature and inappropriate manner. I was also aware that multiple groups did know about the book prior to the leak, and upon public confrontation by some of these people that I knew had known about the book, I had lashed out under pressure as I felt targeted and cornered. My mental health is by no means an excuse, and I have spent time to better it. Therefore, I decided to listen to the criticisms of how I handled things. I decided my best way of doing that is to take time to properly let myself cool and assess everything at once. I thank you to those who were patient and understanding during that time. I have also apologized to my friend groups, as suddenly leaving them was nothing but a terrible approach as well. It resulted in them having to defend themselves with little evidence to give other than the word of mouth. I also wish to apologize for acting oblivious for the first few days of my return as if nothing happened. It was a mistake to do such. As per request, this is my response video. I want to first give you a perspective and a rundown of how this situation actually unfolded, in complete detail from the beginning to the aftermath, as well as screenshots and conversations to go along to give you the perspective of me and my private friend groups during this time. I would first like to mention that anyone in this video has their name blurred out as per request or by the chance that I could not get into contact with them. This video is not meant to be an instigation toward anyone, but it is me testifying my own experience and the situation against how Scott Cotton handled. I would like to also mention that this video is not monetized. I would also like to mention that this video will not be up for the public for long. While I will not be deleting the video, I will be making it unlisted after around 2 weeks. I give full permission for this to be downloaded and re-uploaded. The reason why I am making this unlisted is due to the fact that I have been accused of doing this for attention and for views. I also want to move on from this situation and believe that I do not need to keep this up for my channel as a permanent stain. That being said, I want to give you the full story of what happened first. On January 13th, 2023, I ordered a book off of a retail site by the name of Abe Books. This site in particular is essentially an eBay for booksellers, and is also a go-to place for selling rare book copies. At the time, I was anticipating the release of the Character Encyclopedia, which was on the horizon of its release. I would usually go to Abe Books under Scott Cawthon's author page and sort by new to see if any booksellers were having copies available. While most sellers do not ship copies ahead of time on this site, I would use this as a reference point to tell me when copies would start being sent out to stores soon. However, a particular listing caught my attention, one titled The Freddy Files Uncorrected Proof Pre-Marketing Copy. The amount of time someone has came across an uncorrected proof of a FNAF book has been extremely rare. Not to mention one for The Freddy Files, which at the time had no public record of an obtainable copy. And so I saw this as an opportunity to seize, and out of excitement, I decided to contact the seller directly via email for more information regarding the copy he was selling. After receiving news that the book was in fact real, and after seeing a recognizable name of an obscure character, I immediately rushed to my friend groups in excitement. I first joined a voice chat in a friend group which I'm going to refer as Server A. This is a server of around 20 active users, all of which who have been close friends of mine for years, and are comprised of members of the Reddit mod team. I then broke the news to Server B, which is a server comprised of even more close friends, but includes people who are fanatics of the FNAF lore, such as I am. They were delighted to hear the news as well. I went ahead and purchased the book. The seller lived in Alaska, and out of my anticipation and excitement for uncovering lost media for a franchise that I do fixate a lot of my free time on, I decided to purchase express and priority delivery to ensure that it came as early as possible. This cost around $40 in shipping, given that they lived on the complete opposite side of the country. As time went on, it was only a couple days until I started getting news that the package was en route. While I was unable to find the exact copy of the tracking history, I do have a screenshot of me joking around in Server B about where the Talbert Files was last seen during its delivery. On the night of January 15th, 2023, I had received the book, and I went straight into Server A to read the book live to a group of around 15 people. There were about 6 Reddit mods in the voice chat to witness this, and the live reading was around 5 hours, 37 minutes, and 2 seconds, as a friend of mine came up to me recently saying that he had, in fact, recorded the original reading of the book. While I cannot show the full recording itself, because there are names of people who do not want to be associated with this, there is, in fact, evidence that the book was live read, and it is on recording. Up until the FNAF 3 segment of the book, I stopped reading it, and I got into a panic mode after the contents of the book were very overwhelming. I was also overwhelmed at the fact that I would have to tell Server B that I got this book. The issue being that Server B had people that I did not know fully yet, despite being close friends with a lot of them. Out of fear of having to tell them about the contents of the book, I decided to tell them that I returned it. In a panic, I decided to email Scott, telling him about me finding the book and me not knowing what to do with it. The following morning of January 16th, he responded. I interpreted his email as another scenario where we would have to keep this secret, because if it got out, it would understandably cause problems. This was a concern that I myself had, as there was an ongoing debate regarding the books, one that still goes on to this day. With there being scrapped lore in this book, I also did not think that the community would take it quite well, as it would be used for theories. A couple days later, I decided to go into a small group DM with people from Server A. For simplicity reasons, I'm going to call this group DM Server C. There was about 8 people in this DM, with about 3 Reddit moderators, all of whom can back it up if they wish to. Once again, this reading was fully recorded and archived, as well as notes were taken by the people who were in the group DM as well. I let things calm down for a few days after I had fully finished the book and decided that I wanted to keep this book hidden from even myself. The book had already caused a lot of paranoia and problems to me, and I decided to put it into storage for the next year. I kept it in a box with all of my other old Five Nights at Freddy's memorabilia. A few weeks went by, and ironically, I felt guilty for keeping things from Server B and lying to them that I returned the book. I decided to come up to them and reveal everything that had happened. They were quite delighted to hear this, and started asking people who were mutual servers with Server A as to what they could recall from the book. Therefore, a user from Server B decided to compile a document based off of secondhand accounts from the people who were in Server A. This is the document that eventually got leaked. While a lot of the document is accurate, there are some discrepancies and small details which got lost in translation. Therefore, not every single little detail in this document is reliable. Over the next few months, we all agreed to keep this private, as if it got out, it would be quite catastrophic for the theorizing community. I had a friend in Server B at the time who was already working on a fanfiction by the name of Notes from an Investigator. There's a segment in the Talbert Files which had inspired him to make something based off of it in his own fanfiction. During this time, however, there was ongoing drama within the friend groups that I will not get into, and 2 people got banned or left on their own accord during this time in the server. The server I'm referring to being Server B, not Server A. Names will not be given, and reasons for the bans will not be given in either, as they are personal. However, we do fully believe that these people ended up leaking the document from Server B, as a couple weeks later, this in fact happened under an alt. In July of 2023, it started to spread more after a Reddit account by the name of LakeBBB5 posted to it on the Lost Media subreddit. This started causing panic in Server B and both Server A, but mainly Server B, as it was apparent that the information that was told in Server B was only being leaked through this account. At the time, we had no idea who this was, but we suspected it was one of the 2 users who were not in the server again at the time. In hindsight, now that this had all ended, we later learned that this was a specific user, but rather someone in a group of multiple people who were intentionally out of spite trying to leak it. Although myself did try to investigate what was going on after I started seeing people online actively talk about the contents in the book in a cryptic and mythical way. The irony being that later on, when this book got revealed, the same exact people who ended up being cryptic accused me of being cryptic, even though I was not the one to be leaking it in the first place. While my friend Mono was making his fanfiction, he came up with the idea that he could use his fanfiction as a cover-up in the case that it ever got leaked. I decided to agree, as I didn't see much issue with it. This, however, did become an issue later along the line, as people started to find out that there was, in fact, a cover-up. Despite the desperation of people trying to leak this out, I will admit this was not the best approach at all, and I regret accepting it. Throughout the months of the year, it became apparent that there was multiple groups of people who were being more cryptic about this and shoving it around, acting as if they knew what they were talking about, and that they had the higher ground in morality in what they could do with the book. LakeBBB5, in particular, kept leaking this in desperation over months and months and months, and every time, to each avail, failing. Our friend group started to get very agitated, understandably, because it was clear that this stopped being about leaks and started being about an instigation toward me and my friends. If there was a case where they fully knew what was going on, they would have leaked everything prior with the full story. But, as we learned in the end, Lake had no idea what they were talking about, or at least they claimed to not know what they were talking about. It wasn't until May of 2024, this year, where Lake ended up posting the full thing to Twitter, in which multiple people who were involved and knew Lake started spreading it around in a very nonchalant manner. This was very agitating, as these people seemed to later on accuse me of keeping info hidden just to be cool, despite the fact that they themselves were the ones shoving it around in the public in the first place. Eventually, when I left, after Lake again leaked my messages, everyone who was involved and those who weren't involved were celebrating, as if they had accomplished something, as if they knew the whole thing from the beginning. Until 3 days later, when Scott responded, suddenly they completely changed their demeanor, as if they had knew the whole time that it was obviously fake, and continued to clown on my friends, the only people in the situation who had experienced the full story. Lake ended up deleting their account out of guilt, even though I know for sure that they are not guilty whatsoever for this. They claim to have not known the reason why I kept it hidden, despite the fact that a whole year ago, they had seen the email from Scott, which very clearly told us the motivation behind keeping it a secret. I was very upset, and so were my friends, because it became very clear that this stopped being about the book and started being a breach of privacy and instigation toward me. Something that, to this day, people still continued to frame me as some quote-unquote secret FNAF mafia. I do not know everyone who was connected or involved to Lake BBB5, but I do know some that were. I have blocked those, and I will continue to block those who do end up being eventually found out to be connected to this. That goes without saying that not everyone I do block is related to Lake BBB5. But a lot of people who did get blocked are for some reason surprised that I did so in the first place, as if they were not clowning on my friends for an entire year and being cryptic about it in the first place. Now comes the aftermath of the whole situation. After the fact that all of this had happened, my friend group was in shambles, and our mental health was deteriorating. It is suddenly framed now as if there was some grand conspiracy going on that we were orchestrating and that they had exposed, despite for a whole year prior believing that it was real with the intent to harass us and get it leaked out. Can I express how annoying this is? I again would like to thoroughly apologize for how we handled this. This was not handled the best way at all. However, to say that we intentionally did this to start drama, attention, or anything whatsoever on that line is completely incorrect. Given the fact that, again, for a whole year, we were trying to keep this secret and being instigated, harassed, and sent cryptic messages from multiple groups who threatened to blackmail us. That being said, I would like to take this time to clear up some accusations that have been made against me. Number one, I lied, and I'm continuing to lie because I want my headcanons to be proven real. This is something that has been thrown around a lot, and once again, goes to show how very little people understand about the situation. Once again, I must reiterate that this was never intended to leave a specific friend group. Under the assumption that this was a hoax, and the motive was to prove my theories, it would make zero sense as to why I'd create a hoax with the specific notion that it was scrapped and non-canon, as well as it directly contradicting current lore. What also doesn't make sense is the fact that Scott and I had known that this would be kept under wraps, knowing that people would take it as canon and use it for theories. Not only does this make no sense to fake, but it doesn't benefit anyone whatsoever. And once again, the book contradicts beliefs that I do currently have. Number two, I did this to cause drama, and I want attention. A frequent claim that, again, does not make sense whatsoever, and is probably the strangest one out of the most. Again, this was never intended to leak, and was not leaked by me. I don't know why people think that I intentionally leaked it, when again, it was someone else. If I wanted to do this for drama, it would imply that I had foresight that this would get out in the first place. Number three, I faked it to trick my friend group. Another accusation which does not make sense, as I've actively withheld information from both of the friend groups. If I was orchestrating a hoax or conspiracy against 30 people, it doesn't make sense why I'd withheld some information from one of the others. Number four, I'm continuing to insist it's real, not because it is real, but because I need to save my public image and reputation as a leaker. Now, something that I have brought upon myself unintentionally is the fact that I am regarded as a leaker or insider for a huge portion of the fandom. I admittedly was quite reckless with some of my choices over the past year and should have been a bit more careful if I did not want to be labeled as such. I do not consider myself as a leaker, nor do I want to be known as that. I never intended to be, nor do I ever intend my platform to be as such. To set the record straight, I have shared unseen information regarding the franchise, specifically regarding the development of the first film, all of which was not requested by me, but was given directly with full permission by someone who was working on set. There seems to be this fear-mongering going around that I have been stealing things from people to make money or to have a platform, such as this comment, for example. I have not stolen anything from people who work on this franchise. I have also even directly worked with them to clarify up misconceptions, misinformation, or things that may be causing trouble for workers on the development of the films. I have also been a source of journalism. This does not constitute as leaking in the terminology that you may think it does. I did not leak the script directly, but I did report on things that I read from it. For instance, something that Matt Pat himself had done. Granted, there is a clear difference between me, a fan who's interested in trying to report on the franchise, and MatPat, someone who was actually on set of the film. My source, however, did work on the film, and they believed it was fine to share the script as long as I didn't post the whole thing directly or show the post-credits. Every quote-unquote leak I posted after that regarding the films has been nothing but normal journalistic information. Film dates and development times are almost never fully revealed by the producer companies at first when it comes to the film industry. I have never leaked anything important about the second film, nor do I plan on doing so. In fact, going forward, my source and I have agreed that we will no longer be reporting on the films in general, as people seem to be getting the wrong idea. The fear-mongering is unnecessary. To say I am doing this to earn money, too, is a bit ridiculous. Not only do I make zero income from my Twitter, but I earn a bare minimum ad revenue from my videos. I donate 90% of the earnings to the PCRF. I do have a real-life job instead. I do this because I'm passionate about the franchise and I want to talk about it. Initially, I just wanted to come across as this fan that has a lot of dedication and encyclopedic knowledge about the franchise, as well as having my Twitter be a journal for me to talk about it. I may have, however, gotten too excited and stepped some boundaries for some people. I have also, for the record, earned zero income from the movie script video. Not only am I permanently taking this video down, but I want to show you that I physically cannot earn anything from it, as Universal Studios has a claim on it for the movie footage being used in it. I cannot earn revenue from this, nor have I ever done so. Bringing up the claim of me leaking the books, I have ironically had more problems with the book situation than the movie. This community seems to be incessantly hostile at times when things tend to annoy them, and they will find any justification they can to try to stop it. To set the record straight, I have never once leaked a book early. This, again, is misusing the term leak, as people seem to interpret it, as me illegally or unofficially obtaining it. I bought a book legally because the place I live has it so some books arrive earlier than the street date. This is something that is normal, not just with books, but retail copies in general. This is incapable of being prevented. Keep in mind, this was all before I ever had a Twitter platform. I was not feeding off of leaks, nor did I ever plan on doing so. In fact, I did not like the attention, as the treatment that I got, and still continue to get, was super toxic. This narrative is not only harmful to me, but outright causes fear in between developers who actually work on the franchise. I need you to realize that after a certain point, when you become an influencer, you will begin to hear things that you are not supposed to hear. That is just unfortunately how it is. You either start hearing things from random people, or you hear it from other influencers. It is no secret that a lot of influencers, including me, know some things about the franchise that aren't public, even when they aren't supposed to know. Every time this happens, however, it is kept within a safe environment, and the developers are always aware of what is going on. I have also directly worked with some developers in the past in an attempt to prevent leaks. So to make the claim that I am stealing is not only completely false, but is disrespectful and overall unnecessary. By no means will I be using a fake book to do this if it was never my intention to be a leaker in the first place. My intention has, however, been to be a figure for the community in terms of information with a franchise that has issues with both misinformation and a lack of transparent communication with the fandom and its developer. I try to do this in a respectful manner that does not negatively affect the developers working on it. And every time I question something I may plan on doing, I always run it by a developer contact first. I do not plan on continuing with this, since the treatment and narrative being painted is ridiculous. I have nothing to gain from leaking, never did, and never will. In order to prove that the book is real, I've gone through the liberty of showcasing a 360 view of the book itself, as well as a small page turn to show you that it is, in fact, fully binded and printed with a glossy cover. For more context, this book is heavily unfinished, and I mean heavily unfinished. There's some pages which are the exact same as the final version of the Talbert Files with some differences to temporary page placements. Some pages being straight up blank, and some pages being a complete outline of what the book is planning on trying to do. In total, I counted around 112 pages. And during the making of this video, people have began to make the claims that I've spent the time printing a book from start to finish, which is why A, I didn't show many images of the book itself at first, and B, why it took so long for me to make the video and post images of the book a whole month later. For one, I need to make it clear that I have never been the best at documenting stuff. This is my fault. In times that I do document stuff, they are not the best photos. For instance, the radioactive photograph of the book that I took first back in 2023. Number two, this isn't something exclusive to this book only. When I live read the Tales books a couple months early, I had taken very few photos of the books themselves. 90% of the photos in question being just the color. The reason why I bring this up is because the same discrepancies and arguments used against the radioactive photo being legitimate are present within the photos of the Tales books themselves. And it is known for a fact that the Tales books that I got are 100% real, despite all the lack of documentation. No interior photos were taken, and it was entirely reliant on my word. My word in which directly quoted sentences and paragraphs from the books months prior to their publication. Unless you believe that I somehow also faked the Tales books, which is pretty impossible, given the fact that it would require me being some conspiracist that has access to manuscripts before physical release, which in itself is a baseless claim. All these discrepancies can be chalked down to the poor camera quality, angle, and documentation. That does not answer the question of how the hell the book looks like it's radiating. For a while, I could not replicate this exactly until recently, where I discovered why. It was a mix between the lens of my phone camera being fogged up, as well as the compression from the Snapchat camera app. I used to take a lot of photos with Snapchat before I stopped using it, as it provided a lot of options than the regular camera app. However, this came with the underlying effect of Snapchat compressing images by a great margin. With this combination of a foggy camera, a flash lens, and an awkward angle, it gave off the effect of a glowing radioactive book. The reason why the red strip appears to be bleeding is due to camera glow. Thanks to people on Discord, they were actually able to test this out. Someone edited the contrast on the photo and was able to very visibly get rid of the red glow and showcase that the red line is a lot smaller than the glow made it appear to be. Another anomaly that people pointed out is how in newer photos, the red line of the uncorrected proof is visibly shorter than the original photo. This is actually correct. The line of the spine, back, and cover did used to be longer than it is now. But because of the poor condition I kept it in, as in it was kept in an entire cramped box for a whole year, there ended up being weathering on the book. This pushed the binding as well as the rest of the cover, tearing it off in some places. Another thing I would like to mention is how there is a slightly noticeable difference in shift between the first cover photo and the one now. I've asked some people as to what could possibly cause this, as I was not sure myself. I got told by many people that this is actually normal for paperback books as the paper begins to shift and wear over time. I'm not sure exactly what causes this, but it does happen. I want to clarify is the accusation that I have spent this time to print a book, as anyone can easily personalize a custom print. Number one, this would imply that I had been spending a big portion of the month making the book, and also spending money to buy it. This would not add up with the break that I took, where for the first few weeks after the incident happened, I had taken time to spend time with my friends. Multiple people who are my friends, including those on the subreddit mod team, can account for this. It wasn't until late May, where I first actually began working on this video, that I would start writing the script for it. This would give me a 2 to 3 week time frame to fake the book, print it, and make the video all at the same time. I do not have all of the free time in the world to do this. As I was editing this video, I decided to actually do some research to see if it was hypothetically possible for me to do this. In multiple printing services that I could find, however, you can in fact print books for such a cheap price. However, there are a lot of issues with this. I cannot print a book like this under US copyright law, even if it was for personalized books. Not only would this book that I am supposedly printing would pose as an uncorrected proof for a pre-existing book, which uncorrected proofs are protected under publishers, but there are pages that are straight up from the Freddy Files that are barely unchanged. No printing press company will let you do this if it is taken directly from another publicized publication. And to even risk that, all for a hoax, is beyond more trouble than making a hoax like this in the first place. Some then argue I could have just used a local printing company. Do you realize how suspicious that would be? I would have been directly questioned if I had to print a book with pages that already exist from another book. That counts as plagiarism. For the validity of this book, a user who is actually an expert and fanatic specifically in scholastic publishing, as well as an author herself, had approached me when I first started sharing images recently and asked me to compare it with my Into the Pit uncorrected copy. Upon doing so, she was able to evaluate that the binding was pretty explicitly consistent with every other uncorrected proof piece made by Scholastic, despite the fact that some copies do vary in slight differences. She went out of her way to say she was fully convinced now that this was the case of being a legitimate product, given she had seen many fakes in the past, but this one, if it were to be faked, would have to have been a near-perfect replica. Another piece of evidence against me was the fact that this book was supposedly printed in May 2017, despite the finalized cover being revealed in February 2017. This would give the question as to why they were swapping between covers if they had finalized the book already. This can easily be explained from the fact that there is factual information that Scholastic was tampering and experimenting with the covers of the book after the fact of the original one was released. Regardless if you think that the Talbert Files is fake or not, it is undeniably shown that there were multiple covers of the Freddy Files. There is even records of there being multiple different descriptions for not just the US but UK versions, as well as different page counts. There were multiple versions of this book in development at the same time. There is one lingering question, though, that I myself am questioning about. On one of the pages, you can see that there are children's drawings, which a lot of people have pointed out are the same exact ones from Help Wanted, which came out years after this book was printed. I myself am confused by this, and I am not going to deny that they are the same photos. They are 100% the same exact drawings from Help Wanted. A proposed explanation, however, is that Help Wanted was in development since 2017. A month after this book was printed, we got our first mention of Help Wanted, and remakes being in the talks. In September of that year, he once again brought up the development of the VR project, and that if it looked good, its proposal would be greenlit. Later on, in January 2018, Steelwool Studios posted a teaser image on their Facebook with the Freddy mask at their studio, indicating that they were, in fact, working on the game. It is very much possible that either Scott or Steelwool were already working on remastered assets for the game as early as mid-2017, and for some reason ended up in this book, either intentionally or through a miscommunication. It's important to note that this would add up with the VR game initially being a remake of the first game, in which these drawings are all explicitly ones from the first FNAF game. Something that's quite damning is what Spring Popo brought up. There are traces in the game files of the first Freddy files having assets being used, meaning that they were directly cross-referencing the book and the game during development. In the process of proving the email conversations are real, I want to first acknowledge a claim made by a pretty viable source. Kane Carter, the director of the fanverse game Pop Goes and its spin-off Pop Goes Arcade, tweeted on the matter as to why he had great doubts that this email from Scott was real. In his tweet, he claimed that in approximately over 45 emails with Scott, he had made little to no spelling or grammatical errors in the conversations with Kane that are seen in my emails with him. He attached an analysis appropriately. To make it clear, with all due respect, I'm not saying that Kane is unreliable whatsoever, nor am I saying that his justification on being skeptical is incorrect, as we are talking about a man who directly speaks with Cawthon on a frequent basis more than anyone else. His judge of character definitely would prove more accurate than anyone else. Therefore, it is very understandable that people are going to take his word over it. However, the argument and analysis in question that he provided is weak. Mainly, the claim that he uses apostrophes consistently in his grammar. By digging into Scott's post history, I did find a post where he has outright commented on something in the past where people bring up his misusage of the word "it's," stating that he makes this mistake on a day-to-day basis, just like in the emails that I received from him. The point that does stand strong in Kane's statement, however, is the fact of the usage of "don't" isn't ever missing an apostrophe when Scott types. I myself have yet to find a case where Scott has done this, and to Kane's claim, there is no public comment I can find of Scott's where he uses the grammar incorrectly like the email chain I had with him. But, to my defense, I feel like as if hyperanalyzing grammar should not be a smoking gun for a man who has actively made mistakes in the past. And in other cases such as Scott never starts a sentence with the letter H, feels over-analytical and something that Scott himself probably doesn't have a conscious thought over making. That being said, Kane's argument aside, I do have a way of proving that this email is in fact real. This is by using a virtual machine. A virtual machine allows me to create and simulate an entire computer inside of my own personal PC. Through this, I can basically show myself opening a freshly new computer and then logging into my email. Theoretically, there would be no way to fake this without some advanced editing. Something that is already a shaky claim, given how I am already being accused of faking Photoshop photos with inconsistencies. If I can make Photoshop errors, I don't see why I'd be able to fake this either. As you can see here, I'm setting up a VM from scratch to show you that there's no pre-existing software that I had downloaded on a previous boot. I have it in windowed mode to show you a moving cyberpunk background. This is so I can show you that there's no cuts, no edits, and no jumps between footage. If the background is perfectly looping, there's no way for this to be possible. As you can see here, I've appropriately started the email chain in question, no editing tricks, no inspect element, and that it is clearly Scott Cawthon's email address. This should be undeniable proof of its existence. As to my knowledge, there is zero way to fake this without advanced editing. Something which again is not consistent with the claims against me. Scott's first response to the situation was under a Reddit post regarding the email that I received from him, in which he first said, "Guys, you gotta stop believing this stuff. I didn't write this." A few minutes later, he made a second comment, in which he said, "Everyone, listen to me very carefully. I love this community. You know that I do. But I don't have the time or energy to comment on every drama post that pops up on the Reddit. I have no idea what the Talbert Files is. I haven't read it, nor do I plan on reading it. More importantly, if I ever wanted to give clarification on anything, like I'm doing now, I would do it through a Reddit post and not through a personal email. I have something fun planned for the 10th year anniversary of FNAF, and I hope to post about it soon." First of all, there are quite a few issues with this comment. Mainly the fact that he says, "I have no idea what the Talbert Files is, I haven't read it, nor do I plan on reading it." Regardless if you think that I am telling the truth or not, this is a very big red flag. As the owner of a billion-dollar franchise, you should not be admitting to not looking into stuff like this. That is completely ignorant. Not only are you completely disregarding what the point of the whole drama is, but you are saying that you have no idea what you're talking about. During this time, a friend of mine who is on the Reddit mod team, but does not wish to be named, ended up emailing Scott regarding the situation. The email that was posted in which Scott saw was actually pretty paraphrased from the actual email that I had received from him. And so this moderator decided to email him back with clarification in regards that hopefully there was no confusion between what was actually sent. In which his response was, "I never sent that email to Entom. It doesn't even sound like the way I write. I'm sorry for the confusion, but I never sent that. You are mistaken." My friend then responded back with, "I'm sorry to pester you, but are you sure? It was from January of last year. So you sure you didn't just forget? It's just that Entom is a close friend of mine, and you saying this implies he not only lied about your email, but wrote up an elaborate fake one for his friends only." Scott then responded with, "It's possible that I could forget emailing someone, but I'm reading what you sent me, and I know for a fact that it's not something I would write. It's simply not the way I write. Also, I wouldn't give that kind of statement to someone through an email. I would make a post on Reddit. I'm 100% certain I did not write that." Since Scott was simply not budging, my friend decided to bring up some more emails between Scott and I that I had during when the week before cover got revealed, in which I asked him on if he was going to be reusing the name Stephen Callahan. Once again, Scott Cawthon showing signs that he would be reassuring if this ever leaked. It is important to note that Scott is told directly that my mental state is not in a good place, as well as the whole group of friends in general are being hurt by this, in which Scott's only response was, "I don't remember these messages below. But again, the longer message that you sent to me, I can 100% confirm that I didn't write." Not only does he completely disregard the statement regarding my mental health or my friend's mental health, but he leaves yet another vague response. The way this is worded comes across as if he is 100% confident that the other messages are fake, but that some of them may be real because he can forget. That is at least how it comes across to me. While I'm not making an accusation here, it comes across to me as dancing around the situation in the case that it ever came out as real. He could simply say that he forgot. In fact, he decided to make a full-on post about it, which I am going to read now. Okay, everyone, here's my official statement concerning the Talbert Files. As I said elsewhere, I don't know what the Talbert Files is. I haven't looked at it yet. I never said it was fake, though, despite the emails I'm getting. We are talking about 2017. and that's a long time ago. If it is an unpublished version of the Freddy Files, like everyone says, then it was obviously rejected. Lots of stuff gets rejected. One thing that everyone needs to keep in mind is that a lot of companies that I work with come up with products from time to time that try to fill in the gaps of the lore. They essentially create new lore in trying to create a product. This happens a lot more than you may realize. Almost every time this happens, however, I step in and say, no, don't create lore, just focus on established lore. Even a detail as small as EST 1983 on a t-shirt, I'll say, no, don't include an established date because that confuses the lore. Companies don't realize this. They have good intentions. All of this to say that, yes, it is possible that the Talbert Files is an old version of the Freddy Files. But if it is, it was obviously rejected. Anytime you see an unpublished book, or an unpublished screenplay, or even scrapped merchandise designs, try to keep in mind that a lot of the ideas get scrapped because they are simply bad ideas. The other problem is that I've seen emails supposedly by me that were not written by me. I do sometimes reply to emails, rarely. However, the one that I've seen posted on Reddit and the one sent to me privately by members of the Talbert group is a fake. It wasn't written by me. There are too many obvious giveaways. Please don't harass anyone over this. I think there's a lot of confusion over this, obviously, but I don't think anyone has intended to cause problems. Number one, again, he states that he has not looked at the Talbert Files and does not plan on doing so. First of all, why are you making a post about this if you do not know what you're talking about? Second of all, he states that I never said it was fake, but if it is, it was rejected. That is not a clear statement whatsoever, and at the time, a lot of people pointed this out. He also then goes along to state that this was 2017, so he probably does not remember when this was scrapped, or if this was even something proposed in the first place. It wasn't until people in the comments kept asking, we do not have a clear answer for this, your statement is vague as always. He made an edit to the post. Okay, I've been looking through some of the Talbert Files pages. I couldn't find any downloadable versions, but I watched YouTube videos browsing through it. I can pretty confidently say that the Talbert file is fake, and not an unreleased Freddy Files. It looks completely unfamiliar to me, and not something Scholastic would have put together. It also mentions characters that weren't created until years later. Pretty sure it's fake, folks. Number one, at the time, there were no pages posted of the Talbert Files. Aside from like one or two, there was no video on YouTube at the time that was looking through the pages of the Talbert Files. So the fact that he's making the claim that, yes, I looked through some of the pages through a YouTube video is simply not true at all. While you could make the argument that maybe he's referring to the document that was put together, because to be fair, there were videos going through the document, that just makes it even more confusing. So, I don't know if this was the case where Scott thought that the document was the pages. Why is he acting like he's completely oblivious? Any person can look at this document and see that, yes, it is not the actual pages. There are documentations of the pages in which there are bullet points mentioning it. There are no public pages at the time of this post. Not to mention, he then says, it looks completely unfamiliar to me, and not something Scholastic would have put together. It also mentions characters that weren't created until years later. Pretty sure it's fake, folks. This directly contradicts the fact that he said prior that he would not remember something that was dated back to 2017. Why is he suddenly making the claim that he would remember if something like this was made? Why are you suddenly able to remember something that was made from 2017 after saying that your memory is foggy? About a day later, my friend felt like he had been a bit too harsh and decided to email Scott back apologizing for how the situation escalated. As at the time, a lot of people in my friend group were emailing Scott regarding their frustrations with this. Not only was it affecting me, but it was affecting the friend group overall. In which Scott once again responded with a completely different demeanor than before, and with a very interesting response. Hey, I appreciate the email, but you don't have to apologize for anything. I wish I'd handled some things differently. But it is what it is now. I'll work to try to heal everything. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by you will work to try to heal everything? I'm not sure what you could possibly do in order to heal the amount of harassment, the amount of mental distress, and the amount of public disclosure to my reputation plummeting would do. I'm not sure what you could do to heal this. Making another announcement of a game or using the 10th anniversary as an excuse again is not going to work as something that heals something. The question that everyone seems to be asking is, if Scott lied, why would he lie? The question I think you should ask instead is, would Scott lie? I'm not going to answer or speculate on what I think the reason behind him lying was, as it would not be appropriate or respectful in the sense that people have made accusations about me during the whole situation. But instead, I'm going to bring up Scott's past situation and his history of shadiness to show you that this is not something out of the question for him to do so. On December 20th, 2023, Scott Cawthon claims that the development team behind the Roblox game Survival Crew was not meant to release at the time and was actually a result of a miscommunication between him and the developers. The miscommunication in question being, quote-unquote, approving a skin as release the game. I'm not exactly sure how in the hell in the English language that you could miscommunicate something such as this. It is certainly a terrible excuse that somehow most of this fandom did, in fact, take at face value. Keep in mind, the mistake he's claiming here is that there was a miscommunication between him directly and the developers working on the game. This, however, does not add up with Striker Entertainment, FNAF's licensing company, who was promoting the beta of Survival Crew the day it launched. This does not add up with Scott's claim that it was a miscommunication between him and the devs directly. While you can argue that they did it quick enough for Scott to not respond, not only is that unlikely, but is straight up wrong. According to assets on Roblox.com, the beta was actually in full preparation since September 2nd, 2023. A whole 4 months gap between preparation and release. The amount of time for a miscommunication to be cleared up here is insane. And if anything poses a greater issue that needs to be addressed, in the unlikely scenario, he straight up did not communicate with them for 4 months. That is also an inexcusable act that he should not be defended for. Nor should we completely ignore the fact that he straight up told the devs to start over on behalf of his own mistake in both situations. The badges themselves have full assets and were last edited in September. They have not been touched since September. Establishing again, this beta was planned for months, making the chance of this being a miscommunication astronomically low, being that there is also movie assets provided in the beta too, something which released a month prior to the beta. There's also public badges which should not be seen but are for dev testing only. These actually show the developers have been testing the skins in September. The time frame here again is very unlikely with what Scott said. Regardless of all that, Scott also completely failed to mention the fact that this game was having a Game Pass prepared for a beta, in which a lot of people ended up buying. Because the game got taken down, nobody got refunds. Despite all that, Scott did not acknowledge that in his response. What also does not add up is the statement that he has never played it and that the game has been very early in development. I'm not sure if Scott is even aware of this, but there have actually been leaks of this game being in development far longer than he makes it out to be, dating all the way back to a copyright date in 2019 with a build in 2022. There is full-on footage of this game existing in 2022. This game is not in early development. This game has been in development longer than one of the fucking VR games. So ask the question again, would Scott lie? Is Scott shady? Would Scott do such a thing? The shadiest thing of them all goes back to the retirement. I'm not going to get into the specifics of why this post got made for obvious reasons, but I will state the elephant in the room. He announced his retirement in 2021, and it is currently 2024. He is not retired. To say Scott would never lie is, once again, completely ignoring the shadiness he's been able to pull in the first place. He lied about retirement. A common argument is that he said he was retiring from games, something that is straight up not true, and not something that he said. He's not only developed and direct full game sense, but he has straight up overseen every single thing in the franchise to this day. This is not retirement. This is working, and he is absolutely earning loads from it. To say he was forced retirement is not true at all either, because he actually brought up retirement before this post was made, not more than 2 weeks before. Conveniently, after this controversial post, people, in fact, did not like what he had to say. It was only a couple days later until he posted his retirement post. The timing here is not coincidental, and the fact it's used as an excuse to say fans pushed him to retirement is absolutely wrong and is once again brushing off his capability to get away with things and is tiring. Ever since he has retired, there's been 7 new books, 2 movies written by him, one of which is currently in the making, 3 games, and even more merch under his copyright, graphic novels signed under his approval, an entirely new and upcoming book series which is being written by him. This is not retirement. To answer the question, would Scott Cawthon lie? I propose all to what I just said, but also another question. Who has more to lose? Me, a dedicated fan who occasionally researches deeply into this franchise and has a relatively big following on Twitter, or a 46-year-old multimillionaire who claimed he was retiring after making controversial statements, but 3 years later is continuing to run a billion-dollar franchise under his sole ownership, in which he can easily manipulate via the lack of transparency he has with everyone involved with it. In fact, I would not be surprised if the reason he did not fire 2 of his main artists was because they had fallen under this manipulation and kept them regardless because they were seen as a yes man for his work. Scott is not evil, and Scott is not a pathological liar, but he isn't some ordinary man on the internet. He is an entrepreneur with the most profitable indie franchise on the planet right now. And just because he may make himself out to be some oblivious old man does not mean he actually is. This man is not a saint, nor am I saying he's some evil capitalist, but he does definitely not need to be given the amount of leeway that he is given right now. It shifts the fandom into this perception that he could do no wrong, and in which it has harmed me and the whole community in the process, due to the fact this video even had to be made in the first place. But like he said, it is what it is. With all of that being said, I believe that I have made my points, and this will be my last statement on the whole situation. I do have plans on what I am going to do with the book after this. I will first be sending it to someone who can repair it, and this someone being a trusted friend, and then I will send it to another friend who will then scan it and archive it for the internet to see. As for now, I'm going to take a break and let things cool off. This situation overall has been stressful. Thank you for those who were patient and understanding, and I hope that the anniversary this year turns out great, regardless of what may have happened so far.